a first-generation American, and a dedicated public servant working for the people of Oregon's 6th District. She is one of the first Latina representatives from Oregon. Prior to representing the brand new 6th Congressional District in Congress, Rep. Salinas served in Oregon House of Representatives from 2017 to 2022. Before entering elected office, Congresswoman Salinas served in the offices of Senator Harry Reid, Congressman Peter Stark, Congresswoman Darlene Hooley, and worked as an advocate for Oregon labor unions, environmental groups, and reproductive rights. In Congress, Rep. Salinas has co-sponsored dozens of bills focused on protecting reproductive freedoms, combating the climate crisis, and bringing down the cost of healthcare and education. Her first bill, one that corrects past injustices committed against Indigenous peoples, was signed into law right before the new year. And with that, hi, Andrea. I think Laura is going to start with a question.
Hi, good evening, Congresswoman. Thank you for joining us. My name is Laura Allen, and I'll be the moderator tonight. So we'd like to hear how your first term is going. Teresa just mentioned that you had a bill signed into law about correcting past injustices against Indigenous peoples. Tell us about that and how you feel your first term is going.
So I'm glad we're starting off on a positive note, because it's easy to get, kind of wrapped up in all of the turmoil and all the chaos and confusion that we're hearing about from the Republican Party, especially in the news, right? That's all we ever hear about. But I'm glad we're starting off on what I like to think of as positive. Positive things do happen. So thank you. And really thank you to Teresa and Terry and Laura for moderating and the kind introduction. Yeah, I did. I had, as a freshman, a new first term legislator, I had a bill passed, and essentially it allows for the Grand Ronde tribe, which is one of the tribes in my district, and they have their reservation in my district. They are allowed once again to pursue land claims that could rightfully be theirs. And what happened was back in, it was a mistake that happened in the early 90s, where the Bureau of Land Management effectively prevented them from pursuing and there's this one strip that's adjacent to the reservation. It's called the Thompson Strip, that should have been theirs. And the BLM prevented them from actually pursuing any future land claims. And so it was a mistake that was made that needed a correction from Congress. And I worked with the Grand Ronde, and they'd been working on it probably for about the past 10 years or so. And I got the bill, and it was handed off to me. I think Congressman Schrader had been working on it for a number of years. And I got it, and I said, well, it's going to go through the House Natural Resources Committee. So I immediately thought, who's serving on that? Okay, Congresswoman Hoyle, Congressman Bentz. And the majority, in the House is Republican, so they get to control the committee. So I figured I need to talk to him. So I did. And his first reaction was like, no, I'm not signing on. I don't like it. I don't like the language. It's going to go too far. So I thought, okay. So we started going back and forth with the language. I mean, it's, this is how this stuff works, right? Trying to figure out, how do I get him to yes, but not make the bill a moot point, right? And it had to be effective for Grand Ronde. So we went through this all summer, going back and forth with language. Finally, I got to a place where he could agree to it. Grand Ronde was happy with it too. It effectively corrected the mistake that BLM had made. And we passed it in early November through the House. And then I had been working with Senator Merkley's office to make sure it got through the Senate. We passed it through the Senate right before the holidays, and then the president signed it right before the new year. So yes, my bill was one of only 27 bills. So as folks know, it was very much it's embarrassing as a new member to say I was part of this do nothing Congress. But in that, I was very proud to be able to do something for the Grand Ronde tribe. So excited about that. I'm also excited about some other little wins that we got. I was able to, come together with some of my colleagues from the Democratic side of the Oregon delegation to push on the Port of Portland to allow some of our flight attendants who really just wanted to do some leafleting and pamphleting and picketing at the port to describe their plight and their kind of bargaining that they're going through right now with the airlines and their wages, and the port was preventing them from doing that. So we got together, we put a little pressure on them, and now they are able to kind of move forward with their campaign. So it's I tell people this all the time. It's not just the legislation that gets passed, but sometimes it's removing barriers or, asking people like, hey, we're watching you and you're not really playing by the rules. What can you do different? So even when you're in the minority, there are some good things that can happen. There were some other, actually some kind of big wins for my district. We were able, and for Oregon, we secured $60 million in federal investments to support about 140 homelessness prevention and support initiatives in the state. And so about just over almost 2.5 million was secured for 10 new initiatives in Clackamas, Lane, Marion, and Multnomah counties. And then there were almost just over 2.5 million for planning initiatives in Clackamas, Deschutes, Lane, Marion, Multnomah, and Washington counties. Pretty excited. I was able to secure 1.4 million for Chemeketa Community College as part of the Department of Education's first ever Perkins Innovation and Modernization Career Connected High Schools grant program. And what this funding will be used for is essentially to connect students from rural and under-resourced schools with college credit opportunities and get them onto a career path in STEM. And then speaking of STEM, I serve on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. And I had a bill, it's called the Quantum Initiative, which essentially will put additional resources, technology, and research capabilities, as well as the actual the technology itself into our institutions of higher education. And this was something that OSU and U of O had asked for. And it was something that I got attached to one of the Republicans' larger bills within my Science, Space, and Technology Committee. This one hasn't come to the floor yet, but I do expect it, hopefully, for us to be able to pass it here before we sign and die at the end of this year. But yeah, so there are other things that are going on. The other thing I will say that kind of feels like a little bit of at least momentum moving forward for us, and for definitely for me, I've been working a lot on the Farm Bill. And so making sure that and I'm the ranking member on the forestry subcommittee, and I joined with my fellow Democrats because what happened was we have a Farm Bill reauthorization, and this is, this includes everything, so much different funding around agriculture, but SNAP and nutrition programs is a very big part of it. We also have crop insurance and disaster assistance for our growers. We have lots of different renewable energy and kind of sustainable agricultural incentives wrapped around this. And so I've been doing a lot of work, especially in the nexus of climate and ag. Well, we passed, and this is something that gets renewed every 5 years. It's called the Farm Bill reauthorization. It was passed in 2018. It was supposed to get passed last year. Well, as everybody saw, there's kind of been a mess in Congress. That's putting it lightly, I know. And so what we did was we passed a 1-year extension. Well, this is starting to drag on and on and on. And so the Democrats kind of went on the offensive. So all of my fellow, we're called ranking members, since we're not in charge, we're the ranking members, we're not the chairman, but I'm a ranking member on the forestry subcommittee, and I joined with my fellow Democratic subcommittee ranking members. And we essentially put out what we called our principles in the next Farm Bill. And we're really pushing for the Republicans to start to move in the direction of passing something. And the principles should be something that Republicans can sign on to. Things like reducing hunger, strengthening America's farmers, investing in sustainable agriculture, which our growers are asking for, revitalizing rural America, lowering costs for farmers and families, improving equity, and supporting renewable and bioenergy. So I consider that a win as well, because at least I feel like I'm starting to dictate the conversation and the narrative. So those are some of the positive things that I thought you guys might be interested in hearing about.
That sounds great. Wow. It's not what we hear in the news, that's for sure. So
I know, which is why I felt like I needed to mention some of these things. And I've been working nonstop on lots of things outside of my committees of jurisdiction. Like I mentioned, House Agriculture Committee, Science, Space, and Technology, but kind of my bigger, outside of those jurisdictions, I'm working a lot on mental health, substance use disorder too.
Well, I think everyone here is curious to know what it's like working with this Congress, with the MAGA fights over the speaker, threatening government shutdowns, wasting our taxpayer time and dollars with their investigations on conspiracy theories and the like. What's that
That's
like?
right. Yeah. Impeaching. Secretary Mayorkas. I won't lie. It's frustrating. And the reason it's frustrating is because I'm here to work for the people of the 6th district and the people for Oregon. And I know in my heart, and I know as a practical matter, that all of my Republican members, and whether they're moderate or whether they're extreme, they were all sent to Congress to do the same thing. But because of all of this infighting and all of this chaos, right? And I know, and because they're following the lead of the former president, right? He is dictating, he's calling the shots here, right? And there's no question about that. He is calling the shots and they're following his lead. And because of all that, it's the people who are missing out. And so that is what's heartbreaking, because I hear constantly from my constituents that prices still feel too high. We know that if inflation is going down and that, we are keeping pace with uh, unemployment. So, unemployment is also going down. But if people aren't feeling it in their pocketbooks, then it's not real. And that's what's frustrating to me. And I'm like, so why aren't we talking about, these monopoly gas corporations, right, who are making record profits? Why aren't we talking about some of these larger grocery stores that also feel somewhat monopolistic, right, and have shown kind of quarter after quarter increasing profits, while people on the ground across America can't afford groceries, right? And we're talking about reducing SNAP benefits. I'm just like, I know that my food banks and my food pantries are seeing increased demand. And so that is telling me that people are not back on their feet. Things aren't going well, and that they're not going well in my district, which I know is a very purple district. They're not going well across the US. And so that is what makes me really angry and makes me motivated to fight even harder, because I'm like, we have to take the House back, because these guys do not care. They don't care about even the constituents they were sent to Congress to represent. And so, yeah. Now, with all that said, I will say that feels like it's the larger body in the Republican conference. There are people clearly that I've been able to reach across the aisle and work with, right? I think about 50% of my bills that I have sponsored have a co-lead, a co-Republican lead, right? So I know that they're facing the same challenges in their district around, access to mental health, substance use disorder, and, all of the things that we're seeing, homelessness. And so I've been able to get, and not just like a sponsor or somebody who's, kind of, oh, sure, I'll sign on to it, but actually somebody who wants to lead on the bill to help me through their conference to get something passed. But I feel like whenever it takes like somebody to have a little bit of courage or a bit of a spine, they buckle. And that's, again, the frustrating part, because I know in their heart of hearts, they want to do the right thing, but they're fearful. And that feels challenging, again, because I don't feel like if their constituents really knew what they were doing, I think they would feel shortchanged.
So given that Trump is calling the shots, as you said, how do we convince voters that the prices they're seeing that aren't going down as they should, and the feeling they're of not doing as well that they're seeing despite a strong economy, how do we convince them that voting for Trump is the opposite of addressing the problem, and that the Republican policies are actually causing these problems?
Well, the thing that I have started to kind of repeat over and over again, because, and I know we have a high deficit, right? We spent a lot of money during COVID to keep people afloat, to keep food on people's tables, right? To make sure that people weren't dying and getting COVID and had access to healthcare and services and that sort of thing. So I get that. And we do have a growing deficit. But what people aren't talking about are those tax breaks that Trump put in place. I ask people when I talk to them, do you make over $500,000 a year? I don't. My family doesn't. I'm like, are you a large corporation that's making record profits? Those are the people and the entities that got tax breaks. And so when you see, and I think people are like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, so when the Republicans talk about all this spending that's going on, it's not just about the spending, but it's that we don't have the revenue to cover the programs that we used to have. And when that is the past behavior, you're going to have the same behavior from a multimillionaire kind of president again. He's not going to look out for the little guy. The only person he looks out for is himself, right? And we have 91 indictments to show for that. And so I think we have to continue that drumbeat, is to remind people, how well did you fare in those Trump tax breaks? Because all I hear is about like the SALT tax, right? And how, as Oregonians, we can't now, if you did itemize, you can't put your, reduce your state taxes from your federal taxes anymore, right? And so it's things like that. He wasn't looking out for the little guy. How mortgage interest deduction for homeowners got removed, right? So things like that. That's not something he is inclined to do. And he's certainly not going to ask like the big grocery stores to break up their, I think the top 3 grocery stores, the largest 3 grocery stores, have pretty much a monopoly on about 40% of the market. He's certainly not going to go ask them to break up their power when they're doing so well. And so that's not the sandbox he plays in. He is out for himself and other big guys like him. And I think the more we remind, I don't know. And I'm sure I know I'm preaching to the choir, right? I try to figure out how to get my moderate Republicans in a place that they feel comfortable standing up to him. And that's the hard part. And I just feel like, but we're not all highlighting the same deficiencies that he has in his thinking and his motivations, because he is not motivated by anybody else but himself.
Well, these are great talking points, especially when you're talking to people about high prices that haven't gone down, and that they're not feeling the recovery that we're seeing. So that's very helpful, I think, to all of us.
Yeah, I mean, it's about, right, for so many of them, it's about quarterly profits.
Mhm.
And that's not what my folks, buying groceries want to hear.
So the immigration and the southern border are another issue that MAGA has focused on in this election and the last election. Could you just generally explain what you see are the issues with regard to immigration and the southern border, and whether you think there will be any compromise legislation passed to address?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I think, I mean, Tom Suozzi in New York 3, I think, really just took that race and ran with it and ran with that issue and won on it. And, and I know a lot of my Democratic colleagues and I, while I think we were a little fearful before, I think I plan on leaning into it because, and again, I know from my own story what my dad did when he came over, as a child, and was able to, with my grandparents, work in the fields, make their way. He moved into the middle class. He served his community, as a police officer for over 30 years. And we have people in our communities right now who are either here for, they're economic refugees seeking a better life, like my dad and my grandparents, or, they are seeking refuge from other horrific conditions. A lot of times it is, um, drug cartels and fleeing violence in their own home nations. But we also have millions of people here already working, already making wonderful lives, growing their families, sending their kids off to college, who also need relief and want a path to citizenship. And what I always constantly say is we have 2 issues going on right now. There's a humanitarian crisis at the border. I've been down there. I went to El Paso with Congresswoman Veronica Escobar back in May of last year to see for myself what was going on. And I heard from Customs and Border Patrol that there is a lot, and I saw it actually. They were showing us on some of the technology that, the X-ray technology, and it's more than X-rays, but the advanced technology that they could see like drug packages within the seats of these trucks that were coming over. And they don't have enough manpower to deal with some of this stuff, and they don't have enough technology, right? And so that's an issue. And the communities down there are having a really hard time addressing the influx of the thousands of migrants that are coming in, right? And that's not fair on the community. So there is a humanitarian crisis going on. That is very different from the change in immigration laws that we need to make. And what I tell folks is the last time we made significant changes to our immigration laws was in 1990. The world had a population of 3 billion people. We now have a population of 8 billion people. 5 billion more, and we have not changed our immigration laws and how and when people come to this country and what that looks like. And so we need to start there. We need to start and realize like there needs to be number changes, countries need to be changed, and we need to take care of the people who are here first. And that's a little frustrating for me, especially because I don't feel like the Biden administration is really taking that into account. I mean, my district is 20% Latino, right? And I know the contributions they're making. And I know, the families that they're raising. I want them here and I want them to feel secure, and I don't want them to be afraid to go and ask for services that they can, legally get. But they're so fearful, I feel like sometimes, that they can't really thrive. So we need to take care of the immigration piece, and we need to make sure that customs has the manpower and the technology to prevent fentanyl from coming in, right? And these are two separate issues though, and we need orderly migration. But because we haven't addressed the immigration system, they definitely dovetail. But because we haven't addressed the immigration system, we are actually encouraging more people to come in rather than trying to figure out a way to get them diplomatically and working with their native countries to stay in their country until the time is right for them to come over, or until the right time is right for them to come in. And so right now we don't have an orderly system, and it is completely chaotic. We can fix that though. And I right now place the blame at the Republicans, because again, they are just falling in line with Donald Trump, who wants to use this as a political tool to win the next race and keep it on the agenda. We had the chance. I mean, Chris Murphy. So I'll tell you a quick little story. So as a member, I'm in leadership in the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. I'm the freshman leader, and I've been working very closely with CHC. I'm sure you've heard this. We've been complaining about it. We have not been involved, and it really included either Senator Padilla, who serves on the appropriate committee, the immigration committee on the Senate side. He has not been included in some of these discussions. So we are trying to work with the Biden administration and get them to listen to us and to understand our concerns. But we were talking to Senator Murphy about the package that he pulled together with, I can't remember the Republican's name. And it's not because I'm 81 or any age, but and Senator Sinema on the package. And this was a week ago, this past Monday, when we all flew back in. And we were learning about what was in the package. And I was like, it wasn't great. I was thinking, there were some good things I had signed on to, like kind of fentanyl control and that kind of stuff. As he was explaining the package, we saw Twitter and text messages coming through that McConnell was already urging his Senate colleagues to vote no on it. It hadn't even been put on the floor yet for a vote, and McConnell was already shooting it down. So he was taking Speaker Johnson's lead. He was taking Trump's encouragement to basically say no to the border. Let's keep it as a political issue until to the 2024 election. That's on them. We had, and now who knows what Speaker Johnson is going to come up with in terms of a border policy package, if anything.
Okay, thank you. So turning to another light subject, Ukraine, in the wake of Navalny's murder this week, the NATO intel that Putin plans another invasion, and then these reports of the Republicans' witnesses being involved with Putin, do you think there's any chance that this Congress could at least pass aid to Ukraine to help stop Putin?
It's interesting the way these Republicans have really kind of boxed themselves in a bit more and become so much more isolationist. I mean, honestly, this is part of the grocery problem too, right? We are seeing this sustained increased price of wheat. The US only grows so much wheat, right? But we know a lot of it does come from Eastern Europe, and Ukraine is part of this, right? And we're seeing increased transportation and shipping costs. So this supply chain issue is still kind of revolving around what we're seeing in Ukraine and Russia's assault on Ukraine. And so we have to get something done here that says no to Putin, because it's not only, in our economic interest, but it's also in our, geopolitical interests to help with Europe. And the fact that, again, Trump is coming out and saying, and we're members of NATO, right? And so if we don't provide aid in the form of funding and helping NATO to defend itself, we could be obligated to supply troops. And that is a very fearful proposition for me. I do not want to see the United States, military engaged in this. But there are so many reasons why we need to move forward. And it sounds like there is a group of Republican lawmakers now, kind of in response to what the Senate did, who are trying to get a package together. So, and it sounds like some moderates. So I don't know what we will see from them, given that every time something from the middle comes out, their far right flank derails all of it. Right? I mean, this could send them into a tailspin that they want to move to vacate the speaker again. So that is another interesting question. And every time I say, oh, I have hope, it makes me sound naive, like I'm not watching what's going on. I know what's going on. I try to stay optimistic, and I have to laugh, because if I didn't laugh, I would start crying, because it is so shameful that the far right of their party hijacks the rest of the conference, and it's despicable, really. I mean, it's not, because we're seeing it, right? And I don't think people are putting those pieces together. They're not taking what's going on in Russia and Ukraine and putting it right into their grocery store basket and seeing like, oh, this is what's happening. Right. And it is truly perpetuating. I know I feel like I overuse this word, but this crisis situation. And I know that when Democrats are in control and Hakeem Jeffries, my 20th vote for speaker is going to be for Hakeem Jeffries. We've done 19 votes for speaker in this Congress. It's unprecedented. But my 20th vote will be for Hakeem Jeffries, and we will take back the House.
Thank you so much. I know you have to leave, but I want to give you a chance to tell us, what can we do to help you get reelected?
Oh, thank you. Well, you all have been so helpful. You were helpful in my first race back in 2022. So thank you. Thank you for that. I mean, there's a few things, right? I am up against Mike Erickson, just declared a couple of weeks back that he will run again. And there are two other Republicans in that race, former Senator Denise Bowles. She's not raising at the rate that she needs to. And we saw Mike last time. He put in close to $3 million of his own money. So I think he'll outraise her or outgive him, he'll give himself money and probably win the primary. He has higher name ID. And so coming out of that, it's going to be challenging, but I know that, and we saw it last time, if I'm financially competitive, I know we will win the seat again. And I'm doing everything I need to do on the ground in the district. I'm here constantly. Anytime we have a break, I'm coming back. But money is a challenge, right? So my average donation, I think, is $150. So, anybody who wants to give or wants to help me expand my network, we're happy to do, grassroots kind of events as well. It doesn't have to be high dollar. Like I said, I have, low dollar funders. But yeah, money is always good. I'm at about 1.1 million right now in the bank, and I'm shooting for about 4 million by August. So I have a ways to go. I'm frontline. The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee knows that this is a vulnerable seat, and we need to win it if we want to take back the House. So they're helping me as well. But yeah, any help I can get there is wonderful. And then, of course, we're going to be starting all of our grassroots and our organizing. And again, you all were very instrumental and helpful with that. So anybody who wants to come out and knock doors with us, make phone calls, text banking, that is all really, really helpful and appreciative too. We love our organizers and those who are willing to talk to their neighbors.
Thank you so much. We'll definitely be there, and we appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you all. Thank you all so much. And I look forward to working on this together. I'm getting excited. I don't want people to be Debbie Downers. We're going to do this. It's good. And I'm super fired up. So thank you. Take
Good night,
care.
Congresswoman.
Bravo. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Ryan, thanks Laura for moderating tonight. We appreciate it. All right. Well, the last part of this meeting, we would like to go into the legislative session. Debbie, you can stop the recording. So what we'd like to do, because the short session is happening in Salem right now, and it goes for another few weeks. Our next meeting